The challenge. The council chamber of the Dominion was a cathedral of arrogance. Black stone pillars reached toward vaulted ceilings lined with gold and starlight, a reminder of the Empire's 1,000 conquests. Around a crescent table sat the hierarchs, their faces carved from centuries of pride and certainty. They had ruled the galaxy for generations. They had crushed civilizations older than the humans could imagine. And yet, here they sat, speaking of Earth. "The losses are unacceptable," hissed High Strategist Kaler, his frilled crest bristling. 3 legions, erased. Supply lines disrupted by primitive weapons. Annihilation at the hands of a species barely capable of interstellar travel. How is this possible? Whispers rippled through the chamber. Some called humans vermin, others demons. All agreed, something had to be done. "Perhaps we overextended," muttered one hierarch. "Send diplomats, re-establish." Diplomats. Kaler slammed a taloned hand against the table. "We do not parley with primitives. We dominate them. We annihilate them. That is how the Dominion endures." The murmurs turned to silence. No one dared challenge Kaler's fury. Finally, the eldest hierarch, cloaked in star-woven silk, raised a trembling hand. His voice was old, brittle, yet absolute. "Then let us send the finest." The chamber froze. The words carried weight. The finest legion was not deployed lightly. They were legend-made flesh, warriors sculpted from the strongest bloodlines, trained on death worlds where only 1 in 10 survived their youth. Each soldier was worth 100 lesser troops. Their war machines had cracked planetary shields. Their commanders had never known defeat. If anyone could silence the human problem, it was them. Approval was unanimous. And so, Commander Varix was summoned. He arrived clad in obsidian armor trimmed with silver, a figure carved from discipline and superiority. His eyes glowed faintly with the cybernetic augmentations of 1,000 campaigns. He knelt before the council with the stiffness of a blade drawn for war. "You called for me," Varix said, his voice like gravel dragged across steel. Kaler's crest flicked. "You know of the humans." "A species of savages," Varix replied without hesitation. "I have studied the reports. They bleed easily. Their weapons are crude. Their tactics, desperate. Yet they are cunning. Persistent. Too persistent," Kaler hissed. "They have destroyed fleets they had no right to touch. You will end this farce. You will bring Earth to heel. The Dominion's honor demands it." Varix bowed his head. "Then it will be done." The council rose as one, chanting the oath that had carried their empire through centuries. Strength is destiny. Dominion is eternal. Outside, the docks of the capital world thundered with preparation. Titans of metal, warships so vast they cast shadows across cities, aligned into formation. The finest legion, 10,000 soldiers in armor that shimmered like liquid fire, marched into their carriers. Their chants shook the ground. Each step was a promise of annihilation. Among them, Varix walked in silence. He remembered battles where worlds surrendered at the sight of the finest. He remembered victories where resistance crumbled in days. In his heart, there was no doubt. Humans would be no different. And yet, something gnawed at the edges of his thoughts. The report spoke of human ambushes that turned sure victories into routs. Of civilians fighting with sharpened scrap, standing against plasma fire. Of warships crashing into Dominion cruisers with suicidal determination. He dismissed it. Desperation was not strength. Before departure, the High Strategist met him one last time. "You carry the weight of the Dominion's pride," Kaler said. His voice trembled, though with anger or fear, Varix could not tell. "Fail, and history will not forgive you." "I do not fail," Varix replied, stepping aboard his flagship. The fleet engines roared, tearing open the night sky. One by one, the ships vanished into the fold of hyperspace, streaks of light swallowed by darkness. On the capital world, the people celebrated. The council declared that victory was inevitable. Statues were draped in banners. Songs of conquest filled the air. Yet in the far corners of the Dominion, in places where whispers carried faster than truth, doubts remained. They had sent armies before. None had returned. And now they sent their finest. The invasion. The void rippled as the Dominion fleet broke from hyperspace. 100 warships, black and gleaming, emerged above a blue and green marble. Earth. Commander Varix stood on the bridge of the flagship Imperious Dawn. Before him, the planet spun in serene indifference, clouds swirling over oceans and continents. To him, it looked fragile, unworthy of the legends whispered through Dominion ranks. "This is the cradle of humanity," one of his officers scoffed, mandibles clicking in contempt. "A primitive world. Unshielded. Exposed." "Do not be deceived," Varix replied, his voice cold. "Primitives should not have bled us before. Remain vigilant." The fleet descended. Earth's defenses scrambled. Metallic specks rose from the surface, fighter jets, antique by Dominion standards, belching fire and smoke as they clawed toward orbit. Ground batteries awakened, launching missiles that streaked upward in desperate arcs. To the Dominion, it was laughable. Plasma cannons roared. Beams of searing light carved the sky, vaporizing entire squadrons in seconds. Missiles detonated harmlessly against shields. Cities trembled under the thunder of alien engines. And yet, humans did not retreat. Even as their aircraft disintegrated, survivors rammed themselves into Dominion transports. A crippled bomber, wings aflame, drove into a carrier's hangar bay, detonating in a fireball that consumed hundreds of soldiers. On the ground, artillery crews fired until their positions were glassed into ash. Civilians dragged wounded pilots from wrecks and pressed rifles into their hands. Varix watched the carnage unfold on the holoscreens. The resistance was nothing like the orderly surrenders he had seen on other worlds. The humans were chaotic, uncoordinated, and yet fierce beyond reason. "Admiral, resistance pockets remain active across all continents," a sensor officer reported. "Their command networks are fragmented, yet they continue to operate." Varix narrowed his eyes. "Then we will break them piece by piece. Deploy the Legion." The finest descended. 10,000 soldiers in armor like flowing obsidian stormed Earth's surface. Drop pods shrieked through the atmosphere, crashing into ruined streets and smoldering forests. War machines unfolded, towering mechs whose cannons reduced human tanks to molten slag. At first, the humans fell back under the assault. Cities buckled. Highways cracked beneath Dominion walkers. In New Chicago, alien banners rose above burning skyscrapers. But the humans adapted. In alleys and sewers, ambushes struck. Entire patrols vanished in seconds. Explosive traps tore through armor. Hackers slipped into Dominion comms, broadcasting false orders, leading squads into dead ends where awaiting soldiers fired from hidden rooftops. At the siege of New Chicago, Varix witnessed something he had never seen before. The humans should have surrendered. The city was broken, its defenses shattered. Yet its people fought on. Firefighters carried rifles. Children carried messages through rubble-strewn streets. Every street corner became a barricade. Every building, a fortress. A human general, his name lost to Dominion records, stood at the front, rallying civilians and soldiers alike. Dominion mechs fell to improvised bombs. Tanks were dragged into ambushes. Even when crushed beneath overwhelming fire, humans kept fighting. "They are not soldiers," one legionnaire muttered through comms. "They are zealots." "No," Varix corrected, his tone edged with something uncharacteristic, unease. "They are survivors." The battle stretched into days. For every street the finest captured, they paid in blood. For every stronghold toppled, 3 more rose behind it. Dominion's superiority began to feel meaningless in the face of human persistence. On the 4th night, humans detonated the city's power grid. The explosion tore through half a Legion encampment, collapsing buildings and crushing Dominion armor beneath concrete. Fires consumed the skyline, but still the humans fought in the smoke and ruin. By dawn, New Chicago was nothing but rubble, neither side in true control. On the bridge of the Imperious Dawn, silence hung heavy. Reports streamed in, unexpected losses, increasing attrition, soldiers whispering of enemies that refused to break. "Commander," an adjutant said quietly, "we underestimated them." Varix stood rigid, his eyes fixed on the scarred world below. He recalled the words of the council, the arrogance of their chamber, the chance of eternal dominion. For the first time, a seed of doubt pressed against his iron composure. "Humans bleed," he said at last. "They die like all the rest. But they do not stop." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Outside, the war burned brighter. And in the shadows of the shattered cities, whispers spread among Dominion ranks, soldiers who muttered of fear, of fighting not an enemy, but a force of nature. For the first time, the finest legion felt the taste of uncertainty. And Earth was only beginning to fight back. The fall of the finest. Weeks bled into months, and the finest legion found themselves trapped in a war they had never imagined. Commander Varix studied the reports on the Imperious Dawn's tactical display. Red markers, lost platoons, destroyed mechs, annihilated transports, spread like an infection across the continents of Earth. Entire companies vanished in jungles, swallowed by ambushes. Convoys detonated in deserts where crude explosives turned sand into firestorms. Oceans claimed fleets as submarines struck from the depths with torpedoes far too simple to be effective, yet devastatingly precise. The Dominion had brought overwhelming force. But humanity had brought something else. They would not yield. And worse, they were learning. Every battle revealed adaptation. Every countermeasure met resistance. Alien shields were overwhelmed by human artillery barges timed with uncanny coordination. Stealth craft were hunted by radar arrays jury-rigged from civilian towers. Even Dominion encryption, unbroken for centuries, was undone by human hackers who turned Dominion comms into chaos. Varix's soldiers, once unshakable, began to whisper. "They see in the dark," one legionnaire muttered after a forest patrol was slaughtered. "They don't stop shooting, even when they're bleeding out," another said, haunted. "They're not afraid of us." Fear spread faster than plasma fire. In Moscow, the Dominion launched what was meant to be the decisive strike, a massive offensive to shatter the last major stronghold of organized resistance. Mechs thundered down frozen avenues, their cannons leveling entire districts. Dropships poured soldiers into the streets. Above, Dominion warships cut the sky with burning lances. It should have been the end. Instead, it was the beginning of ruin. The humans fought like demons. Factories that once built tractors now forged rocket launchers. Subways became bunkers. Civilians wielded rifles scavenged from fallen soldiers. Snipers fired from church towers, vanishing before return fire could pin them down. Children ferried ammunition through sewers that ran red with blood. The Dominion's superior numbers turned the city into rubble, but rubble was the humans' ally. A mech, striding through a shattered square, collapsed when the pavement beneath it gave way, mined days before by human engineers. Legionnaires advancing through an abandoned building were consumed by fire when fuel lines, rerouted by resistance fighters, erupted. The battle dragged into weeks. For every human corpse, another seemed to rise with gun in hand. For every position captured, 3 more were fortified behind it. And then came the trap. Commander Varix himself led the final push toward the human command center, confident that crushing the city's leadership would shatter their will. The Legion advanced, hammering through barricades, forcing survivors deeper into Moscow's heart. But the humans had planned for this. As Dominion forces pressed into the ruins, explosions tore the streets apart. Bridges collapsed, cutting off reinforcements. Communications scrambled into nonsense. Out of the smoke, swarms of humans attacked, soldiers, civilians, even the wounded crawling to fire their last shots. It was slaughter. But this time, it was the finest legion that broke. Entire regiments vanished in the chaos. Supply lines collapsed. For the first time in Dominion history, the elite fought not for conquest, but for survival. Varix stood in the wreckage of a collapsed avenue, watching his soldiers fall. His armor was scorched, his blade dripping with blood both alien and human. Around him, the disciplined formations of the finest disintegrated into pockets of resistance, surrounded and crushed. And in that moment, he understood. Humans were not superior in strength. Not in technology. Not even in numbers. They were superior in will. They fought not for empire, not for glory, but for something the Dominion could not comprehend. Survival with no retreat, no surrender, no limit. Varix's flagship was brought down by human sabotage. Fires consumed the Imperious Dawn. His last sight of the sky was filled with human aircraft, patched together from wrecks, streaking upward to strike again. Pinned beneath rubble, his body failing, Varix recorded one final transmission. His voice was broken, but his words carried across the void. To the council, hear me. We fought them. We brought our finest, our strongest, our unyielding. And still we were broken. They do not fear death. They do not yield to terror. They are not prey. They are predators. Static swallowed his final breath. Moscow burned, but not in defeat. It burned with the fire of a people who refused to fall. And with the fall of the finest legion, the myth of Dominion invincibility burned with it. None returned. Silence. That was all the Dominion heard after the finest legion vanished into the void. No glorious reports of conquest. No triumphant broadcasts of victory. Only fragments, garbled screams across comms, the thunder of collapsing ships, and finally the static-laced whisper of Commander Varix's last words, "They are not prey. They are predators." The council chamber of the Dominion sat in suffocating quiet. The same black stone walls that once resounded with chants of eternal dominion now felt like tombstones. Hierarchs who had ruled for centuries avoided each other's eyes. "We sent our greatest," rasped High Strategist Kaler, his frilled crest drooping, the arrogance gone from his tone. "We sent the undefeated. And nothing returns." "They cannot have triumphed," another counselor insisted, though his voice cracked. "Perhaps the Legion lingers still, regrouping." "Regrouping." Kaler spat. "You know what you heard in Varix's last transmission. His tone. His defeat. Do you not feel it? The stench of failure clings even across the stars." The council descended into argument. Some demanded another fleet be raised. Others urged retreat. None dared utter the truth aloud. The Dominion had met its match. From the edge of the chamber, the elder hierarch rose. His robes hung heavy, his hands trembling on his staff of office. Yet his eyes were clear, sharper than the youngest among them. "Look to history," he said, voice carrying like steel through the chamber. "For ages we believed conquest eternal. We crushed worlds. We enslaved species. We mistook fear for respect. But the humans, they do not fear us." He leaned forward, his words soft but cutting. "They fight not for empire, but for survival. And survival makes demons of mortals." A hush fell. No one challenged him. At that moment, a courier entered, bowing low. He carried a battered data core, retrieved from the wreckage of a Dominion scout vessel that had limped home from Seoul. With shaking hands, he placed it upon the council table. The chamber darkened as the projection began. Static. Explosions. The screams of legionnaires. Then, clear and undeniable, Varix's final message. His scarred face appeared, half-lit by fire. "To the Dominion, you sent us to break them. But it is we who are broken. You do not understand them. They are not stronger than us. Not smarter. Not more advanced. And yet, they endure. They rise again and again, no matter how many fall. They fight with rage, with love, with something I cannot name. You call them primitive. I call them inevitable." The recording ended. Not a word was spoken. Finally, Kaler broke the silence. His voice was hollow, a shadow of the arrogance that once commanded fleets. "Then it is decided. Earth is forbidden. None shall go there again. If even the finest fall, what chance have the rest?" The council stamped its approval into law. The decree was sealed. No Dominion vessel shall enter Seoul. Earth is untouchable. Whispers spread throughout the empire. Soldiers spoke of humans as nightmares in flesh, monsters who tore apart invincible warriors. Traders told tales of Earth as a cursed world, where even the bravest vanished. Mothers warned their children, "Obey, or the humans will come for you." And in time, the truth twisted into legend. But the humans did not know of the council's fear. On their scarred and battered world, they buried their dead, rebuilt their cities, and looked once more to the stars. They did not sing of themselves as predators or monsters. They sang of freedom, of unity, of defiance. And yet, in their quiet strength, there was a promise. If ever the Dominion returned, humanity would be waiting. Stronger. Smarter. Hungrier. The elder hierarch, in his final years, wrote a single line in the forbidden archives, words never meant for public eyes. We sent our finest to defeat the humans, none returned. And I fear, one day, it will be they who come for us.